in 1. Has anyone read the book, War and Peace? Whoa. 2, 3, 4, 5, yes. Oh my gosh, yes, I've talked about this morning. You've heard of novels, War and Peace. Many of you, yes, or have heard of it and have read it, obviously. Yes, Leo Tolstoy. And you know how long it is? So, I warn you. War and Peace could take that long. No. Our friend and interim pastor Andy Phillips was telling me yesterday he was asked to speak at church this morning. That's why he's not able to be here, as he sometimes is. His guest speaking at a church in a different denomination. And the pastor says, he says, I'll warn you, the service could be as long as 3 hours long. Oh. And then he's like, Presbyterians, we don't do that. Goodness gracious, 3 hours long. Maybe you should try it one time. If you will, we're looking at the life of Christ. As I've said week by week, we're looking at the life of Christ after his resurrection, after his ascension. When he ascended to be with the Father, he left the earth physically, but he remained in the person of the Holy Spirit in the life community that he developed, in the church that he developed. And so the book of Acts is the Acts of Jesus, the Acts of the Holy Spirit, lived out in the life of the people that the Holy Spirit touched. And we see how that affected the world, and what changes resulted. We're going to see that next section here in Acts chapter 9. I'm going to start reading at verse 20. End of 19 and 20. And you can be following along. We'll read a few paragraphs. Saul spent several days with the disciples in Damascus. At once he began to preach in the synagogues that Jesus is the Son of God. All those who heard him were astonished and asked, isn't he the man who caused havoc in Jerusalem among those who call on this name? And hasn't he come here to take them as prisoners to the chief priests? Yet Saul grew more and more powerful and baffled the Jews living in Damascus by proving that Jesus is the Christ. After many days had gone by, the Jews conspired to kill him. But Saul learned of their plan. Day and night they kept close watch on the city gates in order to kill him. But his followers took him by night and lowered him in a basket through the open wall. When he came to Jerusalem, he tried to join the disciples, but they were all afraid of him, not believing that he really was a disciple. But Barnabas took him and brought him to the apostles. He told them how Saul on his journey had seen the Lord, and that the Lord had spoken to him, and how in Damascus he had preached fearlessly in the name of Jesus. So Saul stayed with them, moved about freely in Jerusalem, speaking boldly in the name of Jesus. He talked and debated with the Grecian Jews, but they tried to kill him. When the brothers learned of this, they took him down to Caesarea and sent him off to Tarsus. Then the church throughout Judea, Galilee, and Samaria enjoyed a time of peace. It was strengthened and encouraged by the Holy Spirit, and grew in numbers, living in fear of the Lord. This is God's word. The grass withers, the flower fades, and the Lord God is there. Father, I pray that you give us eyes to see and ears to hear, hearts to believe. The power of your gospel, the power of your grace to change us. Lord, I pray that you would illuminate these things to our hearts as only your Spirit can, in specific and intimate ways, as we desperately need. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. The thing that strikes me about this passage is the extremity, the extremes, or the spectrum of response that occurs when a person gets the gospel, or when a community of people gets the gospel. It's when the gospel lands in a human life, when the grace of God comes into a community or into a people or into a person's life, it produces such an extreme response. It's both, in this passage, you see both, it causes war and it causes peace. What other thing, what other message, what other element of our world does that thing? Nothing. Which in my mind proves its validity, but is almost, the paradox of that is almost so frustrating to be able to live under. Because if it was just causing agitation, you could almost get used to that. If it was just causing peace and sort of comfort, you'd almost be able to get used to that. But because it causes this extremity, you're never quite sure what it's going to produce. That validates my life because often, and maybe your life too, because that's often what I'm faced with when I'm living in my own experience with the gospel. When you're sharing it with other people, you're never quite sure what's going to result. Someone might hear it and they're ready to kill you. The next minute they might elevate you to popularity. It's not fashion. And you see that in the life of Saul. Last week we saw his conversion and how he was moving in a murderous threat against the church, against the people, and so much so he wasn't finding enough people to persecute in Jerusalem. He needed to go to Damascus to find more people to put in prison. That's how angry the gospel made him. That's how jarring it was to his own experience. And now God, through Christ, appears to him on the road to Damascus, that we saw this last week, changes him dramatically, and now he's living out of that new grace. And it's almost as if everywhere he goes, in this particular passage, and we see it, it flushes out the rest of his life. But in this particular passage, we see everywhere he goes, what's the response? People want to kill him. And I was thinking about this week. What is it about, why are people wanting to kill Saul? Was he just being a jerk? What kind of a personality do you have to have that when you walk into the room, everybody is out to get you? Now, I do think Paul was a bit, he was brash, he speaks boldly. He mentions a bunch of times how boldly he speaks. He's just sort of out there, he's just sort of, he's a firebrand, he's just sort of, he sparks. He's the guy with the lighter in a room full of gasoline cans. I mean, he wants to blow things up to a certain extent. But I don't think that's why people were out to kill him. There's a pastor in our denomination named Steve Brown. He says when he came to realize that Jesus had forgiven him, and that the work of Christ was his forgiveness for his sins. And then when he was going to go into the ministry, he says, "This was the greatest thing in the world. I get to tell people that God's not angry at them anymore because of what Jesus did on the cross." He says, "Do you think people would love that message? I get the greatest job in the world." He says, "Well, when I started telling people God's not angry at you, they got angry at me." What is it that makes people want to kill Saul? It wasn't his personality. It was the fact that the message of the gospel it's jarring to our natural senses. My natural sense, your natural sense, is that we get what we deserve, and we ought to get what we deserve. And we ought to earn what we have. That we live by a credit system, naturally. Our boot up, the windows of our soul, as it were, the boot up system to our hearts is credit, earning, wages, do your best, and therefore then you get your just deserts. And if you live well, then you get a good experience, and if you don't live well, then you get a bad experience. And unconsciously, without knowing it, we live that system. And so when another system comes in, when Paul or when the apostles or when Christ came and was telling us that's not the system that we're living by. The system that we need to reboot our system. We need to have a whole other way of looking at life. Is that you don't live by the credit system. You live by the grace system, which is I'm going to give you something you don't deserve, and that out of the power of that gift, now you're going to live your life with joy, with satisfaction, and with greater sense of love towards God by doing what He commands. That new system is so jarring to the old system, it makes you want to kill it. And the reason that it makes you and me want to kill it is the same reason that it made the Jews and the others in this context so wanting to kill Saul was because you're telling me that everything I've done, all the ways that I've built up, all the credit that I've developed, doesn't count for anything. And if that's not sort of jarring to the system, here's another thing that might be is that, and you're telling me that guy over there, who he hasn't lived his life well, and he hasn't cared for God at all. You're telling me that guy who hasn't lived well at all, if he trusts in Jesus, he gets the same thing I get? It's the story of the day workers that Jesus told, the parable of the day workers. This is why it's so harsh. The parable that Jesus told was that a landowner went out early in the morning and he got some workers down who didn't have jobs. He says, come work in my field for the day, I'll give you a day's wages. They go, great, this is fantastic. So then he goes at noon, because he needs more workers, and they come and work in their field. Same deal. Come work it, start at noon, and work till the end of the day, and I'll give you a whole day's wages. And then they come and they work, and he still needs more workers, and so he goes out to the place where the day workers were, and in the last hour, there's only 1 hour of work left. He gets some more workers and brings them back, same deal. You work till the end of the day, I'll give you a full day's wages. And at the end of the day, they're all lining up to get paid. And he starts paying the last get paid first, until the early part of the day. So he starts with the guys that came in at 4 o'clock. He gives them a whole day's wages. Then he goes to the guys at noon. He gives them, who they only work 5 hours, he gives them a whole day's wages. And then the guys that he got from the beginning of the day, who got there at 6 a.m., they come to get their paycheck. And the parable goes that when they got there, they go, what are you talking about? We've been working all day through the heat of the day, and they get paid. This guy comes in at the last minute and gets the same pay I got, and I've been here since 6 a.m. What are you talking about? And Jesus says the parable was, master gets to do whatever he wants with his resources. You didn't have a job to begin with. You should have been here to begin with. And yet, you're going to complain about the guy who came in last minute and you were here all day. You shouldn't have been here at all. So be grateful that the master is gracious to everyone. And here's the thing. Which of those workers, if you were to personalize that story, which of those workers do you most identify with? I've shared this story. I've done Bible studies with this all over the place, and most often, when people hear this story, they sort of think of themselves as the people who came in early. And the reason that you get so angry, the reason that people get so angry about the guy that came in at 4 o'clock getting a whole day's wages is because they think they were there at 6 a.m. And that story ties you up in knots and causes a little stir in you. It's because you think you're a 6 a.m. number. And if that story causes a little jarring sort of uneasiness in you, it's because you're operating on the old system of of earning what you get. And everybody ought to earn what they get. And the credit system ought to operate. And Jesus comes in and totally dismantles that credit system. And says it's not about what you're doing right or wrong. It's about what the landowner, what the God of the universe is willing to give you and pay for himself out of his own resources to make you grateful, to make you a hard worker, because you and I were the guys who came in late to the game. And Jesus still says, I'll give you a whole day's wages. What's a great book once that modernized that story a little bit. And in a day and age of higher education, the authors converted not to workers, but converted to students in class, college class. I'm sorry, that's condescending. Refer to this side of the room as if these people are still college students. But it's the adage or the story when the professor at the end of the class gave everybody an A. And it was the people in the class who they were there every day, did all the exams, did all the study, and then in every assignment they get the A, and they're complaining about the people who at the end of the class they didn't come, they didn't do the assignments, they weren't there, they weren't part of the discussions, they didn't do the labs, nothing, and they still get the A. And that's the complaint. If that jars you, the gospel, you're going to want to kill the gospel. Getting something for nothing. That's why people are out to kill Paul, and that's why people are still out to kill the gospel, because it is jarring to the human context of getting something for nothing. And I'm fine if I get something for nothing. That was a good deal. I'm not fine if you get something for nothing. And that's the gospel. That's the gospel. But see, that's the gospel, that truth, that idea is the only thing that changes people. Saul was changed by that truth. Saul was on a treadmill of performance. And he tells us, he uses that illustration over and over again. He says, I was a Jew, I was from the best tribe, I did all my best work, I was the best sort of Jew that you could be. Until I realized none had turned. And I gladly threw it all away. Because that freedom, that gift changed me. And he became a very bold, sort of a very bold preacher of it. Now granted, I think there's a sense where he probably was a little edgy with the people from his own community. Isn't that the way it is? I can talk more abrasively to my family than I can to you. I can tell my sister, she's a jerk, but I would never tell you you're a jerk. Saul, when he went back to preach to those from his own religious community, I'm sure he was a little edgy about it. But it wasn't the edginess that makes people want to kill you. You just don't want to hang out with people. But what makes you want to kill people is when you tell them the whole way you've been living your life is a failed system. And I'm going to give you a new system, and it's going to cause this sort of paradigm shift. It's going to cause an upheaval in everything that you think is believe. Now I'm going to kill somebody. But it changed him dramatically. And then he tries to go into when he gets back to Jerusalem, he tries to come to the church. Now he'd been out trying to kill the church. He'd been out trying to kill Christians. And so the apostles are like, wait a minute, who is this Saul guy? I'm not sure, maybe he's faking it. Maybe this is his newest plan to weasel his way into the church and then find a way to kill more Christians by pretending he is one. That's sort of what they're thinking. And that sort of hesitation might be respectable in some respects. Because you're going, well, you know, if he is sort of a wolf in sheep's clothing, it's important that we not let it in, and you want to be wary, you want to be cautious in that respect. But on the other hand, it almost displays and sort of does display in the life of the apostles how they failed to believe the very message that they were preaching. The message that they were preaching was, no matter how far away from God you are, the gospel of His grace can save you. No matter how far outside the bounds you are, no matter how much a threat you may appear to the people in the world, no matter how dark your life is, no matter how broken you are, the gospel of Christ can change you, save you, and redeem you. That's the message they were preaching. And yet, when an example of that change comes into the church, they're the first ones to go, no. Anybody but Saul. It really shows how the apostles didn't functionally believe the message that they were intellectually preaching to the people around them, except for one guy, Barnabas. Barnabas believed that God can change anybody. He believed that the power of the gospel was so great that even a Saul could come to know him and believe him and to trust him. How was it that Barnabas was able to have that sense of encouragement? How was it that Barnabas was able to trust that Saul was trustworthy? Well, it's subtly mentioned here. It says that Barnabas brought Saul to the apostles, and it says that he told them how Saul, this is in verse 27, he told them how Saul had seen the Lord, and that the Lord had spoken to him, and how in Damascus he had preached fearlessly. How did Barnabas know that? He knew it because he took the time to listen to Saul, and to hear his story, and to engage his experience. Too often, the problem with the church and the problem with Christians is that they do more talking than they do listening. I think I know what your problem is. I've got a solution for you. I've got the answer to your questions. But I haven't really asked you what your questions are. I haven't begun to explore what your problem is, what your story is, what your difficulty is, what your apprehensions are. Why? Because, well, I've got all the answers right here. Let me tell you the answers. Here's the answers. And then Christians and the church go on, blah, 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 blah. Barnabas sets a different pace for the church, different sort of reference point. If you're going to be able to see an encouraging, you're going to be able to be an encouragement and be encouraged by the work that the Spirit is doing. If you're going to be able to bridge people from outside the church to inside the church, which is what He is doing, it's going to first begin by listening to the stories of the people that you're engaging, understanding their situation, asking them what their questions are. My dad, I've told you wisdom my dad gave me growing up my life. He probably got it from these little books that have fun little wisdoms in it. But he often says, and I'm the one that got this most often because I was the chatty one. He would tell me, he says, son, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You should do more listening than you do talking. But I was the blabber. I was the one going on and on and on. And Barnabas, in this context, he listened to Saul's story and had compassion for him. And because he listened, because he understood, because he cared enough to believe that God can do amazing things, and that there's always something God's doing in somebody's life, Barnabas was curious enough to start asking questions, and that's what bridged him from outside the church to inside the church. And more people would be bridged from outside this church or any church, outside the gospel, in this context or any context, if God's people were willing to listen, to hear the story, to ask more questions than to blab about answers. It starts by that curiosity. There's one pastor who wrote a book on doing this, and he says that the key to effective evangelism, as it were, is to love outsiders more than they love themselves. That's hard to do, because we love ourselves a lot. But if someone loves me more than I love myself, which is what Jesus does, it draws me in. And I want to explore what that's about. And that's why there's great peace, great growth, great strength as a result of what the gospel gives in our lives. Both extremes. It disrupts, the gospel disrupts my system. The gospel also, by the grace of God, Jesus is willing to hear my story. The gospel is willing to hear my difficulties and to draw me in and know that there is no one so far gone, no life so broken, no experience in life that is so ugly that the gospel of grace, of God's grace, cannot save you, change you, forgive you, and draw you in. Let's pray. Thank you, Father. Thank you that you transform us by this amazing grace that both maddens us and engages us. Lord, I pray that it is proper measure, or even as it maddens us, as it angers us, Lord, that it would show us that in those places of unease where my soul is troubled by the dismantling of my credit system, Lord, that it would lead me to trust you more, that it would lead me to surrender more of it in such a way that I might be willing to engage in the listening, caring, loving fashion of the people around me. Pray that for your whole church all over this world. What's in the name of Jesus that we pray.
Please turn your Bible to page 6 and